Hey guys, it's Dave here. Today we're going to do a practical demonstration of how to install an iC-7, including the blinkers, the high beams, the handbrake, and the fuel level. And I'm going to show you how you do it on this car. So let's go do it. So before we start, I want to tell you a little bit more about what we're working with here. This has got a 2500 plug and play in it. It's also running an I/O box because the owner wanted to run a whole bunch of different sensors when they take it to the track day so they can see exactly what's happening in their car. We've also included the tire management so we can see the pressure and the temperature of each wheel that will come up on the dash as well. So this will be a really cool thing to see in the real world. So let's go do it. So how I like to install the dash is by getting some small wire. It doesn't need to be anything special. It doesn't need to be anything spectacular. It can come from a factory harness that you've recycled. It can come from maybe even speaker wire, or it doesn't really matter on the grade or how special it is. It just needs to do the job. Depends how long and how far away the dash cluster is from where you're going to be working. Often about 30 centimeters or just a normal ruler length is about where you want to be. Crimp your pins that come with your dash kit, and then you've just got to populate it straight into the connector. And then once it can't go any further, you can then lock your connector off. And then we need to join this end straight into the factory harness. So let's go figure out how to do this. So I've put all my pins and my wires into my connector that came in the dash package. I've got my CAN connector, which will plug straight into the CAN lead that goes all the way down to the ECU that we're just going to plug in. I've got the end of my wires here, which I'm going to use my pin out that I found on the net. That very, very accurately represents exactly what each pin and each connector has that plugs into the factory cluster. So I'm going to use this and then match the pin out from that cluster all the way down to the diagram that we've got for our iC-7. And then we're going to just go through and match up these one by one by one. So let's just start with the right turn and left turn. And I'll see if I can find those with my LED test light that I've got set up. And then I'll show you how to get those connected up with a nice crimp. So if you don't have a diagram, it can take you a pretty long time to pin out every single connector or every single pin that you've got there to try and find exactly which wire you've got. If you can't find a pin out, I encourage you to keep looking because it just saves so much time. So if you can find a factory manual with the cluster pin out, it will save you so much time. But if you can't, basically you go through every single pin when you've got, say, the right blinker on, and you find which one flashes. That's how you find it. And then when you go left, you can imagine it's going to be pretty close to that same pin on for the right. The left will be very, very near, but you might have to go through the entire pin out just to find it. So very, very simple things. Let's just say the handbrake. All I'm going to do is match the handbrake to the brake light. I'm going to take the left turn and match it with the left turn. The right turn, match that with the right turn, and the high beam, and match that to the high beam. So they'll be the very first and simple things that we do. So let's tackle that first. So I've taken a note in my handy dandy notebook, and I've got purple and red as my two blinkers. So all I'm going to simply do is find the blinkers up in the harness up here, following my pin out. They're always a good one to find first. They're always a good confidence booster. So I'll show you how to find those with the LED test light right now. So we'll turn right. So currently one of these wires in here is blinking with the blinkers that are outside in the car. So I'm going to follow my diagram, and I believe it's going to be one of these wires over here. So if I put my jousting stick test light over here, you can see that it's corresponding and it's flashing positive, negative, positive, negative. The reason it's flashing positive, negative is because it gets the ground reference from the other side of the bulb. So it will always show as a negative here until it energizes and puts 12 volts onto that globe to make it flash. So that's where it gets the negative and then you see it transform into the positive. The dash reads the positive signal that comes through that. So if we connect our positive signal up, it should then flash the indicator in the dash. So let's give that a try now. So just going to strip a little bit off the end of this, which is the dash loom side. And then I'm going to go up here. And then I remember that this was the wire and I marked it with some red tape just so I didn't forget which one it was. But all I'm going to do is simply strip back a bit of wire. So you can see just with the strippers, I just strip back a little bit of wire there. It doesn't have to be a lot, just a little bit so we can attach the two bits of wire together. I'm going to join that onto that. Just by doing a very, very simple and not a very, very tight twist, but just to get those two wires just to stay together. From here, you can either do a solder join if that's what you have available, because it just doesn't matter. We just need to do a really nice join that is going to connect those two wires. I'm going to use a brass crimp, and I'll show you how to do the brass crimp just because I find it easier and I burn myself a lot. So these are the strip of the crimps that we're going to use. So we'll just simply twist one of those off, or you can cut it with a set of nice strip cutters or flush cutters. We basically put that crimp over those two bits of wire where they joined. Technically, these two bits of wire can just be parallel and put in the crimp. That's technically the right way to do it, but I don't have 3 sets of hands, so this is going to be the easiest way for me to show everybody. So let's crimp that on one side just to make it secure. I'll crimp the other side, and then one on a slightly smaller, just to pinch it. So I did the first one on the C, and then I did the second one on the D size. That just pinches the two together and makes a perfect join, which works really, really well. Just going to use a nice bit of tape, something quality. Please don't use something that you've just got lying around. We are talking about pulsing 12 volts, and there is a bit of wire behind here, and there is a lot of metal because that's where a lot of the chassis of the car is, so, and reinforcement bars. So let's make sure that we are doing a very nice secure job by taping up our job as nice as possible. So I'm just going to use a good quality tape and insulate that join that I've made. You, by all means, can de-pin or cut this and run some nice heat shrink over it if you don't like the tape idea. But today, as a practical demonstration, I just like to keep it nice and simple and reversible if possible. So if the owner ever wants to revert back, we can make it just plug in very, very simply. We can tuck this behind and then we don't need to use it anymore. Or we can cut it out and it'll all be a nice, clean, very efficient way of just removing this. So that's the reason I like to do it this way. So there's the left blinker. So I'll connect that one up in exactly the same fashion that I did the right. So I've plugged in my CAN cable that comes from the ECU. So we got power now. I'm going to plug in my main connector for the dash. And once this is all powered up and enabled, I just want to see that I got my two wires right for my indicators. So let's just see. Beautiful. We can see that right is working and left is working also. So we're good there. If by any chance I got them the wrong way around, I could swap them again up the wiring, or I could simply de-pin, swap, and then re-pin into the right hole. So it's not the end of the world if you get the wrong input mixed up. It's very easy to change down here by simply removing the pin and just swapping it over. So let's attack the high beams. So pin 25 is our high beam. So I'm going to strip a bit back on that, and then I'm going to find it up at that connector using my pin out. Pin out again, and I think it told me it was this one, so I marked it with red just to make sure. So if I pull on the high beam, beautiful. We can see that it's getting 12 volts when I pull on the high beam. I want to double check because some cars are different too when you put them in the forward motion. Beautiful. So I need to make sure. Some Toyotas do things very, very funny. So not always this simple on a Toyota. So you might need to do a little bit of trickery with some relays, but that might be a subject for another video one day. Next, I'm going to try and find the illumination, or what we call the Parker's circuit. We've got our illumination positive from what I can see. So if I now turn on the Parker's circuit and hold this just right, perfect. So I can see the state change by turning on and off the parking light. So I'm going to join my Parker's circuit into this wire here. So next one we're going to tackle is the handbrake light. Depending on your car, sometimes this handbrake wire and your low level fluid sensor, those two wires may be connected to the same wire in your dash. Sometimes they may be separate. I know some states require you by law to at least have a brake low warning light. You can then join your low level light into your handbrake light, and at least that way you've got some sort of indication to let you know that you're not going to be able to stop. So let's try and find the handbrake light by moving this one up and down. According to my diagram, it's on this connector over here. So I'm going to make sure I've got my orientation correct. And I think it was this one, but I'm not 100% sure. So I can move that by putting the brake up and down. It is not that wire. So that's something I'll have to figure out. I think it was this one. Connectors are funny just with the way that they orientate themselves and the way that they label things. So let's see if it's this one. I'll put the handbrake up and down. There we go. Handbrake up and down, and I can put ground into the circuit. So naturally on the other side of this circuit in the factory cluster would be 12 volts. But when we pull the handbrake up, it actually puts ground into this circuit. So that's how we tell whether the handbrake light's going to turn on or off. So I'll connect my wire up to this. So I just wanted to do a quick check just to make sure that everything's working. We haven't disturbed anything so far in the dash wiring. So we definitely had our right, perfect. We definitely have our left, perfect. I wanted to make sure that the Parkers work because we're on the same stalk. So let's make sure that they work. You can see the color change, which means that we've got the input working and doing the correct thing, and the dash also dimmed. That means we're definitely on the right wire, so that's perfect. As we come back up to normal brightness, the auto dimmer I was talking about, which is in the center of the dash, you can see that that also dims the screen. When you're going through a tunnel or something like that, the dash will now auto dim so that you're not blinded by the bright light as you're going through a tunnel, or maybe you're in an underground car park or something like that. So that's also a really handy feature. We've got our high beam, as you can see there. The indicator's turning on, which means our high beam is working, and I can see it working out there. The last one we need to test is our handbrake. And you can see the park brake symbol turn on and off, which means we've got that right too. So one more to do. Let's do the fuel gauge. The fuel level is definitely a tricky one. Every car is a little bit different in the way that they're made and the way that the dash receives that signal from the fuel level sender in the fuel tank. So I'm going to use the multimeter to try and find the fuel level signal up here compared to what I think it is up at the dash. So I've got my little multimeter extension cables on. We set the multimeter over to resistance, and then I set it to noise. So basically when the two probes touch each other, the multimeter is going to make a noise. So that's how I'm going to know that I've got the right wire up the front and down the back. So let's just prove the point and make sure that we've got the right piece of wire. So all I'm going to do is find the fuel level, which I believe to be the wire over this side, and we'll just have to listen out for the multimeter. Beautiful. So where I thought the fuel gauge was going, it is. So that's perfect. That means we've got the right wire. On the other side of this fuel gauge, there'll be a chassis ground. Technically, we should have a signal ground that comes from the dash, but because this doesn't actually connect all the way through this car, we're just going to see how it goes first, and we can always change it later if we need to add a second ground and run it from the dash all the way down to the bottom here and join it into this dash wire. I'm not going to go through the setup video because Scott's already done a setup video, which you can check out in the link in this video. So you can go through the setup and how to practically get your voltages set in the right place. Another question we often get is, why is my car charging anymore? And that's probably because you've removed the charge light, which the alternator needs in order to start charging. So I've just got myself a little bulb holder, which I've got from the local automotive store, plus a little T10 bulb that goes into this bulb holder so that when we key on, the bulb turns on just like it normally would in the dash. We start the car, the globe puts a bit of load or resistance into the circuit, which makes the alternator start charging, and then this light turns off. So we'll hook this up and we'll see if we've got this right. So I've taken the 12 volt feed from the dash power that we get from the ECU. I've got the charge light, which I've hooked up to the alternator. Again, if you're not sure on your car setup, by all means, grab your multimeter, take your charge light wire from here, go down to the alternator and make sure it buzzes out with your multimeter. So we'll put the bulb in there, we'll key on, perfect. So I know it's working, and hopefully now when we start the car, this will turn off and that it will actually start charging with the alternator charge light. So, perfect. So I saw 13.5 volts, which means I know that alternator is now charging the system, and the globe turned off, which means it's all working perfectly. So we'll put this securely behind the dash out of the way, and it's time to install it for the last time. So I might just quickly put this plastic back over all the wiring that was here to restore whatever purity is left in this car. So we can just use some nice felt tape, or if you're anti-felt tape, we can just use electrical tape just like they did from the factory, but it's more just to protect everything that's there. So I might just quickly give that a quick tuck and a wrap, and then throw some tape around it. So I'm going to pull this whole shroud back out of the car. Everyone might be going, why is this thing sort of in the way? The blinkers actually need this hazard switch functioning and plugged in this car, because all of the positives and negatives for the blinkers actually go through this switch. So if you ever find yourself pulling the whole dash apart and then trying to find the blinkers, but the blinkers don't work, that is going to be why. We need to make sure wherever your hazard button is, it needs to be plugged in for the whole circuit to work. So I'll pull these back out again, we'll put it all back in neatly, and we'll see how it works and if it looks nice. So we've got our fascias in, we've got the surround, we've got the insert. It all looks absolutely beautiful now that it's all in the car. You wouldn't even know. Right, left, our high beam, our park brake, our parker or dimmer in, and we've got 100% fuel level in the car. So for all of the tools and the components that we used in this dash installation, I'm going to put all the links in the description for this video. So if you're not sure where to find something, have a look in there and hopefully that'll answer the question. Thank you very much. This has been really, really fun. Hopefully we'll have another fun project for you next time. Thank you. See you next time.